Alright. Obviously you see the back wheel is off. I have laced up my Profile Elite with the disc mount. So we're gonna hook up disc brakes. This is my first time having a disc brake set up on a BMX bike. I'm very familiar with it from my hardtail, my slalom bike, all mountain bikes. Mounting it to a BMX, I know it's a little different. Obviously we don't have the mounts, we have a little adapter set up. So I'm gonna go step by step. We're gonna learn it together as we go, and I'll show you the difference between a V-brake and a disc brake setup. I really gotta get a new intro. But, you know, I promised you guys a video every Friday at the beginning of the year. And don't think I'm gonna stop now on New Year's Eve. So here it is, your last Friday video of 2021. So in the next week or so, I really gotta get a new 2022 intro. But we're probably gonna be delayed on that because we're still waiting on the race bikes and the new kit. And obviously we're gonna do an intro with all the newest of the new. So anyways, let's get into it. We have the 11 disc pack. And apparently this is everything you need to set up your BMX bike for disc brakes. Where do we begin, I guess? Probably start by taking the V-brakes off, huh? Alright, V-brakes are off. Brake tabs are officially coming off. First off, I'll start by saying, you know, originally when the disc brakes first hit the BMX market, I was kind of on the fence. I thought it was overkill. I didn't really know the reason for it. You don't really have to have like strong braking power in BMX, right? It's different if you're riding four cross or slalom or on the trail bike. You need to have good braking going into turns, and then you got front and rear. But you know, now that you see a nice good looking rim like this Icon, you just don't want to rub that logo off. And it just looks so much better when you have a clean front rim with all the logos, and then you have a nice back rim that matches. I would have to say that's my biggest reason for going. Well, one, I mean, all the bikes are gonna go disc, so I need to upgrade by some point, right? Having a rim that matches the frame perfectly, and man, it's just such a cleaner look, you know? Like, the rim's gonna stay nice all the time. I use this stuff when I'm cleaning my bike by Slick Products. Slick Products shine, and every time I clean my bike, I spray this on there, and it's just like kind of a wax coating. And then see how it's just, I mean, it's not a big difference, a little more flat, and see how it's just a little glossier. I just think I put that over my whole bike. Obviously you don't want to put it on your back rim with V-brakes, but now I don't have to worry about that. So yeah, I'm in, people. Disc brakes on BMX, and I don't even care if brakes work good as long as they feel good on my finger. They don't even have to stop me. But if you have an old grimy cable and it just feels gross to pull your V-brakes, that is just the worst. It changes the way the bike feels to me, and if the bike doesn't feel good, it ain't gonna ride good. And disc brakes do feel really nice. So the 11 disc brake kit comes with these little spacers, and I assume that's to get your rotor alignment correct. I don't know where it's gonna sit, so to start, I'm just gonna leave these spacers off, and if it's not in line perfectly, we'll come back and I'll space it out later on. Profile Elite hub with rotor mounts. The bolts already come with Loctite on them, which is nice. These rotor bolts are T25 Torx, so make sure you have the right tool for the job, because you don't want to strip out your bolts and not be able to get them out later. And you put all this time and money into a nice BMX bike, you don't want to have rounded off, scratched up bolts everywhere. Tightening your rotor down, but don't go all the way down, get them all close. And then once we're all the way down, we're gonna work across from each other. That way, if you start on one bolt and go next bolt all the way around, you take a chance of tightening one side more than the other. Your chances are very slim, but if you just go cross while you're tightening up, you have a better chance of just everything tightening down evenly and the rotor staying straight. I'll be honest, I didn't go to any torque spec. I just gave them a good snug. You're not overdoing it. Got Loctite on those bolts, so it shouldn't go anywhere. We're gonna take this little adapter that's provided, what this adapter does right in there. Makes sense? So it slides in nice. Axle bolt goes through the adapter, and adapter bolts right up next to the disc. So this little adapter that comes with it, see how it's slotted? That actually goes on the outside as your chain tensioner. It goes on the outside of your dropout, and that's what keeps it straight. These dropouts aren't slotted. They're all fixed, so you have to take your axle bolts out all the way. The wheel is in the dropouts. No bolt on this side, but you'll see how that adapter right now is just wedged in between the hub and the dropouts. Then we're gonna take this adapter, and this adapter will go in here. The chain tensioner's got two settings. You can go this side if you run a short back end like I do, or you flip it around and then you have a gap if your axle sits further back. So it comes with this little bolt right here. That bolt is gonna go in the chain tensioner, and that bolts the chain tensioner to the disc brake adapter, and then nothing moves. Now that I'm looking at this, you need to tighten your wheel down before you tighten this, because if you tighten this chain tensioner adapter to the disc brake adapter, it's gonna tighten your wheel to the dropout. So when you get all this stuff on, get everything on and in place, put your chain back on, put your back wheel where it needs to be, and then we'll get back to the brakes. I don't know what BMX frames do it, but when BMX frames start to have the disc brake mount attached to the frame, it will eliminate all these adapters and any moving parts, and then you can just slide the wheel straight out like normal. I use the Shadow Conspiracy half-link chain. I just think it lets me fine-tune my rear end position a little better. That way, like when you have a normal traditional chain, you have to take out 2 links at a time, and with a half link you can take out 1 link and really kind of fine-tune where you want that back end to sit. Be careful not to push on your rotor too much, because you don't want to bend your rotor. You got it in there. Again, you want to push on something that you're not worried about bending. You're obviously not going to bend the bolt, but you do not want to bend that rotor. So you don't want to be pushing or pulling on that brake rotor, because if you bend it, it's like having a bent rear wheel and it's hitting your brakes. That's another great thing about disc brakes. You can still have braking. Say if you ever crash one moto and you bend your wheel and it has just a little flop to it, but you have to race your next round, you don't have time to fix it. Well, you can do that with a disc brake, because it's not going to affect your braking and it's not going to give a rub, and your wheel might be a little out of true, but at least it's not going to be hitting a brake arm. Wheels all straight. Ooh. Listen how good that profile sounds. I swear they sound different on every bike, whether it's aluminum frame or a steel frame or a carbon frame. It always just sounds different on how the noise echoes out of the frame. I love it. It's always exciting, like, because that will sound so much different than like my hardtail will sound. All right, so that's snugged up. Wheels in there straight. We got the Shimano XTR. Guys, I've never ran high-end Shimano stuff, because in the past I've just never been able to afford it. I've never really had a good partnership. I'm really picky about how the brakes feel, as long as it feels good on my finger. This lever, just the bend, everything about it. I don't know, when you're just hand on the outside of the bar, you got one finger on there, there's like little bitty holes in there for a little extra grip, and just nothing beats the feeling of a Shimano lever. Time to feed this cable through the frame. Does it come out the other side? Oh, okay. This may take a minute. Act like you didn't see that. I drilled out the front hole. Somewhere in here it was very tight. When I ran the cable in backwards to fill, there's a really tight section. I really didn't feel like I could get it through. So I don't recommend doing it, but I'm a trained professional. Well, I'm a trained amateur professional. I ran a drill bit in there just to clear that out and open it up a hair. And then I ran an old brake cable back through it. Kids, please, 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 don't try this without mom or dad. I have many years of experience with tooling. I completely trust myself. And we're through. I fed a brake cable into the hydraulic housing. I went in a good ways. As I pushed through, that cable helped guide it, and then it came right out. It was fine. Hydraulic fluid, you don't want that stuff on anything. So anytime I get some hydraulic fluid leaked around, like if you get hydraulic fluid on your rotor, your brakes are shot. As soon as the fluid or grease or anything, you get that on your rotor, then you pull the brakes for the first time, it runs that grease through your brakes, now your brake pads are shot, and you're not gonna have any brakes. So anytime you have some hydraulic brake fluid spill anywhere, just get some alcohol and water and just clean it up really nice. So now we need to get this cable into this lever. Grab a rag handy. Make sure your lever is pointing upwards so the fluid that's inside there doesn't drain out. We just took this end off the lever. Now we obviously got to take the little rubber piece out. You can pull it straight out. It's just got a little O-ring on there. The cable comes with this little inlet. So when you cut your cable to the desired length, this is what's going to go in the hydraulic housing to go in there and clamp everything together. You don't want to have too much cable so it's like bouncing around when you ride, but you also don't want to have it too short if you want to do an X-up or something that gets caught up. I'm going to go a little extra just in case I want to do a bar spin or something. And remember, you can always cut more off. You can never add more cable. I had this little pick that I use just to open it up. Not crazy, but just enough that when you push this inlet in, there's no little burrs that can get clogged on the way. When you're pressing this in, this is a super tight fit, so when you're pressing in, try not to let it slip and kink your cable. The end is pressed all the way into the housing. We're going to take the end of the lever, we're going to slide it over the housing, and then the housing is going to push right inside the little brass sleeve that's inside there. And then when you tighten down this black bolt, it crimps everything together inside the lever. Oh, before you tighten down, do not forget the little sleeve. So you see, this is your end. So I almost messed up. So make sure you slide the rubber sleeve on there and then slide this little nut or bolt on there. The brass piece is going to go down in there, and then the black piece is going to push it in. That keeps everything crimped, and then this piece will slide over so it's a nice clean fit. Again, once I tighten it down, everything is crimped and there's no turning back. Another one you do not want to over tight. Just make sure it's nice and snug. Don't force it. And now we're locked in. We're going to take our alcohol and water mix. Clean that really good, because we don't not want that hydraulic fluid anywhere. See, that's the end without it. Just slide the cap on. See, nice clean look. Now I bleed them. The idea of bleeding brakes is to get any air bubbles out of the line. So if you have air bubbles through your brake line and you pull, what's happening, you're pulling your lever. When you pull the lever, it pushes fluid through the cable, and then that's what closes your brake pads. So if you have air pockets, when you push that fluid, it fills those air pockets and it pushes that air pocket to the back of the caliper. And then you have a gap of no fluid. So you push, that's where you get a spongy brake, or it pulls all the way to the grip. So we want to get any air pockets out of the line. So we're going to start at the caliper, make sure the caliper is lower than the lever, because we want to push fluid in here and push any air bubbles out the top. Air bubbles are going to rise, right? So they're going to rise to the top of the lever, and there's a little bolt that air can escape that way. But first, we're going to start at the caliper. I'm going to put my syringe with fluid onto the back, and then we'll open up the lever. Keep a rag handy, because we do not want to get this fluid on any brake pads or brake rotors. A little snap ring, flathead screwdriver, and you take out that bolt. There we go. Brake pads slide right out. Now those are out of the way, not to get contaminated. And we're just gonna push this right onto this little metal end. Simple as that. Now let's do the front. Hold up, I interrupt this program for an urgent message. After posting this video, I quickly learned I had a huge lack of knowledge. Shimano brakes only take mineral oil as the brake fluid, not hydraulic, .4 or 5. I completely rushed and overlooked the process. Everything else, the process is the same, but do not use dot fluid on these brakes. Thank you. Now let's do the front. Imagine an air bubble coming around the cable, working its way up, and then it's gonna release itself out of that bolt hole right there. 2.5 mil Allen head. Again, have another rag. I don't have one ready. See, there's a little O-ring. Do not lose that O-ring. Put this in a safe place. So if you have a SRAM bleed kit, we can make it work on here. So now I'm screwed in, so I'm not gonna lose any fluid out to make a mess. But what I can do, I can use the suction of this syringe to pull those bubbles out of this cable. So this is actually gonna work very similar to how SRAM brakes work. Now that all that's hooked up, this bolt is keeping everything sealed. What we're gonna do is just slightly crack it open. I'm gonna pull on the syringe. There's like little bubbles creeping up right there. Now as we push, it comes out the other side. Now I'm gonna work both sides and slowly pull out every air bubble from this cable that I can. And hopefully, we'll have a perfect set of brakes. We've got all the air bubbles out. Push some pressure down on the plunger so everything's tight. And then tighten this bolt back down. And now your caliper is locked off and sealed. Put your little rubber dust cap back on because you don't want dirt getting down in there. Just to be safe, just spray a bunch of alcohol, water and alcohol in here. Make sure it dilutes any of that oil because we want it to be nice and dry when our pads go back in. Pull out any extra bubbles. Yeah, we're not getting any. We're gonna get our end that came off the lever. Now as soon as we take this out, I don't know how much fluid we're gonna lose. Have a rag ready. Just have a rag sitting there for any runoff. The rag will catch it. So as soon as we take this out, I'm gonna put this in. Okay, we got a little runoff so far. It's all right. So it's kind of bubbling up at the top. Now we're screwing this in, has a little bit came out, so technically there should be no air bubbles. It should feel good. Remember, our brake pads aren't in there, so don't pull the lever yet. If you pull the lever, those pistons will clamp in, and you gotta push your pistons back out. Just don't touch your lever until everything's clean and brake pads are back in. And we are working. Sorry, the camera just died. We're finishing on the iPhone. Caliper is loose, spin the wheel, pull the brakes. The brakes should be perfectly aligned. Snug up the caliper bolts. And we should have perfect alignment with no rotor rubbing. There we have it. No rubbing. We officially have disc brakes on a BMX bike. If you can get the right stuff for the Shimano, obviously get the right branded stuff, but I highly suggest go to the local bike shop, get your own kit, learn the process, because one, it's gonna be way cheaper than using the bike shop, and two, it's super easy to learn. It seems hard at first, but if you can just learn the process, you're gonna save yourself time and money in the long run. You can be able to do everything at home and always fine tune your hydraulic brakes. Also, that's a good reason why you should use a bike shop. But in my case, I like to learn. Proceed. Once they're dialed, you hardly have to work on them. Watch your brake pads because they're obviously going to wear out over time. I hope it helps. I'm super stoked on this bike. My rim logos will always stay nice. I'll never have V-brake pad scrapes anymore. Keep the bike dialed, looking pro. even if you're not out there winning, at least the bike's gonna look good in the pits. Until next time, Happy New Year to every one of you. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button for me, hit the like, ring the bell, whatever it takes to make sure you're notified when I post videos, because I have so many ideas coming for 2022 and I'm gonna share everything with you guys. So stay tuned and we'll see you next year. Peace. Also, before I let you go, if this is your first time ever using hydraulic brakes, when the brake pads are new, the brake might feel good, but say your bike isn't stopping how you thought it should, give it a little time, ride down a hill, let those brake pads really heat up. It's called a burn-in time, so let them burn in, and then they'll slowly get better over time. The process won't take long at all.